Good evening. Good evening, and welcome. We're going to give it a minute while we just wait for everybody to connect who wants to. A particular welcome if you're one of our new subscribers. It's always exciting, and we're really pleased to just welcome you to the channel and to fellowship, such as it is. We're still learning what it is to fellowship together in this strange new online world. But it's a blessing to connect. Our relationship with one another is by the Spirit of God, and so wherever you happen to be in the world, and no matter how far apart we might be located, it is a blessing to know that in the purposes of God for this season, He's connected us together. Tonight is an exciting night. It's the start of Virtual Church Holiday 2022. To give that some context, that's the third of our virtual church holidays, the third time that we've done this. We never anticipated when we went into lockdown back in March of 2020 that we would be doing this by this stage, but here we are. God has been faithful. So it's the third of our lockdown online church holidays, but it's also, this year is the 30th time that we've had a summer gathering. From our first church holiday, that was located on a reclaimed coal tip in South Wales, through the years there, through to time at Trent Creek in Cornwall, and then eventually sort of finding a home for the remaining time, really for the majority of our church holidays, down in Charmouth. And God has been faithful. God has blessed us. The format has changed over the years, and the way in which we've done it, the way in which we've gathered, the places that we've met, and all of those different things have changed. But God remains faithful. And so this is church holiday number 30. What that also tells you is that in just a few short days, in fact, this coming Sunday is the nearest Sunday this year to it, we'll be celebrating 30 years as Harvest Church. 30 years of God's keeping power, of God's purpose, of God's promises, of God's faithful continuing supply. And so it's an exciting time. This is an exciting week, and I hope that comes across. I always feel slightly strange doing these sessions, so I hope that genuinely that the sense of just wonder and gratitude that I have just to even be here doing this, that comes across. It's also on a personal level, and I don't want to labor that too much, but on a personal level, this coming Sunday will also be the nearest Sunday. In fact, it's exact because it's the 4th of September this Sunday, so it will be exactly 40 years since I gave my life to the Lord. And He's my healer and my deliverer and my strength and my peace and my comfort and my hope, and He always has been and He always will be. I am so grateful to God for His faithfulness that I'm even here. And some of you know my story, and we might share that at some point. But this week is a chance for us to just take a moment in the middle of the year, or the end of the summer, as it is this time, and to just to focus for a few days to really get to grips with some truth from Scripture that we believe is what God is showing us for this season, what God is giving us as we go into the autumn, into the new school year, and all the different changes and the build up to Christmas and all the outreach that goes on at that time of year. But God knows where you're at. He knows where I'm at. And so He is more than able to use this to provide for you and to speak into your situation. And I have to trust God for that, because I don't know who's on the other side of this camera lens. So if some of this feels a little pointed, I don't ever want to make anyone uncomfortable, but I'm going to try and be faithful with what God has given me. I'm not aiming it at you, because genuinely I have no idea who will eventually hear this. So the Lord bless you, whether you're watching us live or you're catching up later, or maybe you're watching this a year from now. I don't know. But I just want to bless God for His faithfulness, to celebrate His continuing goodness, to acknowledge His purpose, to acknowledge that He's not done yet, that there are more things, and to discover in the heart of God for us, through us, with us. And the same is true wherever you fellowship, that wherever you have been planted by God, wherever you make your home, wherever you live out your life, the people that you're amongst, I believe that you're there in the purposes of God. So let's get on with it. Tonight is kind of an opening session. There's always an element of it feeling a bit like an introduction. This week, the series we're going to be sharing is called Following the Fisherman. And as you might have picked up from that, if you've got any sort of church background at all, we're taking that idea from the call that Jesus gives to the first of the disciples that he calls personally, to Simon and to Andrew. And he sees them alongside the shore of Galilee, and he says these words. This is how it's recorded by Mark. Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. Tonight, we're going to just take that statement and we're just going to break it down a little bit. We're going to just look at the elements of it, because there are some parts of it which I suppose for many of us we're so familiar with. We don't really think about exactly the way in which they impact on our expectations of what it is to follow Jesus. And so that's where we're going to start. Jesus uses a phrase, and it's a phrase made up of three words. It's doitio pisomoi, follow me. And you can literally translate that as come to me and follow close behind me, right at my back. This is not following from a respectful distance. You get that with the crowds. When you read the life of Jesus, there are many people who follow from a respectful distance. They choose a spot in the crowd where they're not pressed too close to him. Now, they want to hear what he's saying, but they want to make sure that they can leave without causing a ruckus. You know, the sort of person who sneaks in at the back of a meeting and sits by the door. They're not following from a desire to be close, but rather from curiosity. This isn't that kind of following. It's not following to see how things turn out. It always amazes me how many people just want to see how things are going to turn out. Whatever you're doing in life, if you set out to achieve something, you'll get those who come along to support you, those who come along to contribute, those who come along to oppose you, but you'll also get those who are just curious and don't seem to have anything better to do with their time. There were those people in Jesus' day as well, people who were just there for the fish. But that's not this kind of following. This is not following the principles. If you ever met folks like that, I have a lot of people in my life, people that I love dearly, who, because of kind of the part of the world I live in, they like to tell me how much they respect the principles that Jesus taught, or they respect the type of life that he lived. And they would say things like, well, I'm trying to live the same sort of life as Jesus. But what they really mean is, I figured out some of the underlying principles that I like, and I'm cherry picking those. They might even be following the principles quite closely, but they're not following the pattern. They don't have the same priorities as Christ. They don't have the same. That's not what he's calling them to. This, doitio pisomoi, what he's saying is, you're going to follow me right at my back. This isn't fandom. This isn't sort of, I'm going to cosplay you, Jesus. This is right on his heels. This is where he's going, whatever he's doing, whatever he's saying, doing and saying the same thing. So that wherever Jesus goes and however Jesus moves, they go and move. He's calling them to be those who arrive on his heels, right at his back, following directly behind him into every place, every life, every path, every purpose through which he leads them, flooding into the space that he creates. Now, the Bible refers to Jesus as our forerunner, and we often focus on the fact that he's the forerunner who goes into the presence of God. He makes a way into the presence of God, and that is absolutely true. But he's also the one who goes before us in our lives. If we're listening for his voice, if we are being led by his spirit, then any place you and I show up, any situation we go into, any enterprise we undertake, Jesus was ahead of us, making our way straight, making our rough places plain. He was before us. And this is the following that floods into the space that he makes. People who know me know that I really love I really love American football, and not so much because of the running into people. I mean, that's a lot of fun and everything. But what I love about it is the chess game between the two teams, the two head coaches and the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators, the battle of wills and wits. And one of the things that you see is that the offensive line are trying to create space for the running back or the quarterback to move the ball down the field. And if they do their jobs correctly, then they're reliant on either that quarterback or that running back understanding, and as they see the space opening up, moving through it. And so quite often you'll have a blocker, and the block will be running and right hard on their heels. I mean, tucked in directly behind them, sometimes even with a hand on them, so that as they move, they know which way they're going, is the person that's carrying the ball. And the things that God is calling you to and the life that God has for you, his intention is that you should be right hot on the heels of Jesus. So that as he opens up a way, as he makes a space, as he provides an opportunity, as he breaks every barrier, as he shatters every obstacle, as he parts every sea, as he moves, you move right in behind him. So when Jesus says, follow me, he doesn't mean sort of shamble along behind me, keep an eye on me from a distance. No, what he means is, I want you to move as I move. One of the really stupid TV shows that I used to quite enjoy was a really daft thing called Hole in the Wall. I don't know if you remember it. And it was basically these big foam walls, and teams got dressed up in silly lycra, and they had to make a physical shape and get through the hole in the wall. And so they had to compare the silhouette they could see and figure out how to position themselves so that they would pass through the gap without getting knocked off their feet and into a big pool of water. It's this idea of following Jesus very, very closely, very precisely, paying great attention to who he is, right on his back. Follow me, and I will make you to become, or I will make you become, or some translations, I will make you to be made. What Mark is doing here, and if you are familiar with the other places where this conversation is recorded in the New Testament, you'll know that what Mark gives us is grammatically more detailed. He uses two verbs, and where it just in other translations is, I will make you fishers of men. That is absolutely valid because it's present in the text, but Mark gives us detail, and that detail reveals process. Follow me, and I will make you become. There's two verbs there, poio and genomai. Poio and genomai. I will make you become. You can literally translate this in this way. I will bear in the same way that a mother bears a child. I will bear or produce like a tree producing fruit. I will bear or produce or constitute, that is, form. I'll prepare, I will render you able. That's poio, that's the I will make you to be made, or I will make you become, to be made. Genomai is to arise as, to take the form and the place of those who are. What we have here is Jesus is declaring, I'm going to make you into something that I can then continue to make into fishers of men. Before you or I can enter into any useful, meaningful service of God, we first have to be made new. We have to be made those who then can become. And that word poio, in its most literal sense, to bear us, it speaks of new birth, it speaks of new creation. What Jesus says is, you follow me and I'm going to make you new so that then you can become fishers of men. Now, for you and I, understanding that the first thing that happens that transforms us from not really making a contribution to the eternal kingdom, to being able to be fellow laborers, to be able to work with Jesus, to be able to follow after him, to actually have it within our nature, to be able to chase him. You see, it's one thing saying, God, I want to follow you, but unless he changes us, how are we supposed to follow perfectly in the footsteps of God? How can we run at his back? One of the sports I discovered this last couple of years was speed climbing. When I say I discovered it, I discovered watching it, not doing it. I'm the best part of 350 pounds. The idea that I would be able to do any kind of climbing at all on my fingertips is just a nonsense. These guitar players' hands are great for playing the guitar, but I really wouldn't want to hang this enormous body of mine off them. The reality, though, is as much as I watch it, I could follow someone up to the bottom of the wall. I might even be able to follow them onto the first handhold, but unless I was changed in my nature, I could probably do with shedding, I don't know, maybe 150 to 175 pounds. I would stand no chance whatsoever of following them. When Jesus says to his disciples, follow me closely, run at my back, follow like me, do what I do, say what I say, walk as I walk in the world, it's necessary then that he goes on and says, and I will make you, I will bear you, I will reconstitute you, I will render you able. But there's more, because I guess that sort of seems obvious. It's hardly a shock that people are unable to serve God unless they have come to that new relationship. They've been born again. They have that experience of being made new. But even more than that, there are those who are followers who have been made able to follow, have been made able, but still require the transforming presence of the Spirit of God in order to be able to enter into the ministry, the purpose, the good works that God. You know, religion likes to create this sort of blanket obligation that says right now everybody must be doing X, Y, Z. In terms of the ideas of outreach and sharing your faith, this the kind of the blunt, more obvious understanding of what it is to be a fisher of people. There is this sort of, well, the Great Commission, you better get on with it then. You know, actually what we see here is Jesus is saying, I'll have made you so that you can be made, so that you can rise up, so that you can develop into, so that you can be transformed into. We need to let him shape our ministry. We need to let him shape the way in which we serve him. We need to let him shape the way in which we live. And we need to have grace when he doesn't do that at the same speed or pace or for the same purpose or with the same technique in the lives of others. The church is varied, it's multifaceted, it expresses all the creative and compassionate purpose of Almighty God. Following Jesus doesn't make us clones. Following Jesus brings us to that experience where he transforms us and then he brings us into that for which he made us new. And that brings me to something that I did mention I was going to speak about in some of the advertising for this series. And it's this. We need to think about the limits of the metaphor that Jesus uses when he speaks about the call to Simon and Andrew. Follow me and I will make you become fishers of men. You know, I said in the thing that I actually, you know, there have always been things in my brain which trigger when I hear that phrase. And I'll be honest about that. I haven't done a lot of fishing in my life, but I don't mind doing a little bit of sea fishing. And whenever I am actually in the process of fishing, I think about that metaphor and how terribly difficult it is if you stretch it, or even if you don't stretch it too far, even if you just apply it too thoroughly. They were fishermen, he says, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And my brain says, but what about the fish? What about the fish? The basis of the call that they received was to follow directly in the paths the footsteps, the movement, the purpose of Jesus. So it has to be a call to gather, yes, but not to trap or to snare or indeed consume what is gathered. You see, Jesus loves with a total, relentless compassion and determination everybody that I will ever preach the gospel to, anybody that I will ever share my faith with, anybody that I will ever invite to come into an experience of the kingdom. And so the metaphor can't be applied in that way. It doesn't mean that we can go spearfishing for the people that don't yet share our faith. And so the more I thought about the metaphor and how it's open to being stretched in that way, the more I began to wonder, well, is there something else going on here? Is Jesus revealing something else? Because he doesn't use that metaphor even for all of the fishermen. There are others sitting by the beach that day, and he doesn't use that same metaphor in the call. But to Simon and to Andrew, he does. Tonight, what I want to share with you is the language of that phrase and how I really believe it was so powerful because it expressed something very specific about who Peter was going to be. Remember, Simon Peter plays a significant role in the early outreach of the church because he's the one that God sends to preach the gospel to Gentiles. When Jesus uses the phrase fishers of men, it's made up of two words, halios and anthropos. Anthropos is people, humans, and halios is the word that translates as fishers. So literally fishers of humans. But the word fishers, it's derived from the word hals, and hals is salt. In fact, there was nothing about the fish in the name at all. The word for fisherman was salty ones. That's literally how it translates. And so if you were a fisherman, you were a person of the salt sea, so you were a salty person. It's probably a polite way of saying that in the days before detergent they smelt of fish, but for whatever reason that's what the word means. It means salty ones, salty men. The power of that statement is perhaps lost on us because we forget, because we read, and particularly if like me you grew up with the Bible stories, you read about them being fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is just a fairly large lake. It's very deep, but it's what is it, about 58 miles long, and it's the lowest freshwater lake on earth. And so here you have men who have spent their life fishing, but the name that Jesus applies, the word that he uses, and the name that everybody else applies to them actually speaks of those who fish the open sea. They're fishing in little boats in relatively mild conditions. I mean, as lakes go, the Sea of Galilee, a storm can be a significant thing, but they are very much, they are fishing in a lake, and they're fishing in fresh water. And Jesus says, follow me, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to change you so that you can become those who are halios, who are fishers, salty ones, in regard to people. See, when Jesus called Simon and Andrew, when he calls them, he's calling them out of an experience which is entirely limited to their own tongue, tribe, and nation. It's entirely really limited to Galilee. It's limited to the fishing communities around the shore. They haven't gone anywhere else. They have no experience of anything else. They don't have an expectation to see or change the world. But what he says is, I will make you to become, remember, genomai, to rise up. Simon, your vision is limited, your experience is small, your community is local and pretty parochial, actually. And you are in this setting, but I tell you this, if you follow me, I'm going to transform you, I'm going to make you new, and then I'm going to cause you to rise up, and you're going to be salty ones. I'm going to take you out of this little pool of fresh water and I'm going to release you to the world. I'm going to send you out to the oceans of the lost, to every tongue and tribe and nation. You know, as I've been thinking these few days back over my 40 years and since I came to know Jesus, and the 30 years of harvest, time and again, I thought about how God would tell us something, and it wasn't until it was happening, wasn't until the moment for that word had come to fruit that we realized how perfect the word was, so that even the smallest things would confirm to us where we were. And so as I was thinking about the call and Simon hearing it, that he was going to be really a salty one, he was going to get out of this small environment, that he was going to go on a much bigger scale, he was going to fish in deeper waters and wilder, more stormy seas. As I began to think about that, I thought about how after the vision on the rooftop, after the command of the Lord, and after the messenger sent, he went to Cornelius's house to preach. He's going, and even his companions, I mean, they're going with him, but they must have been skeptical. And Peter's still very much in the mindset that Jesus has come to Israel, that this is good news for the Jews. And now he's going to the house of this Gentile occupier. I wonder if he thought about what Jesus has said. As Peter begins to step outside of the small pool of his neighborhood, the small pool of Israel, the vast ocean of need, and begins to preach the gospel to the Gentiles and see God move by his Spirit, demonstrating that the whosoever will may come. See, the scale of your ministry and call is never dependent on the dimensions of your past. Jesus doesn't say to them, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to just do a little bit of evangelism in this corner. He doesn't say, well, I'm going to call you, and it's kind of convenient that you're fishermen because I've got this good analogy. No. He speaks something specific, personal, direct, because he wants them to follow him intimately. He wants them to move with him. He wants them to be directly at his heels. He wants them to step into and fill the space that he makes for them. And if you or I are truly following, then our capacity to serve, our capacity to accomplish, our capacity to be like Jesus is the capacity of Christ. He says, I'm going to make you to become. I'm going to transform you in your nature, but then I'm going to continue working in your experience so that you rise up and you fully occupy the call that I have on you to be my salty ones, to be the ones that flavor the world, to be the ones that transform the nations, to be the ones who go into your particular places, the ones who go where I've sent you. And so tonight you might be sat there and thinking, well, I'm not sure that God is sending me off to some great distant land or to preach to many people. And we're going to touch on that later on this week. And you might be quite surprised that the example that Jesus gives is not necessarily the one that you have been told it is, at least in that respect. But tonight I want you to understand that it is God's intention, God's desire, that you should be so close to him that you move as he moves. That you just move as he moves. And so that he is able to make you able to continue in that way as he unfolds before you, teaches you, develops you, strengthens and equips you to live out that extraordinary life of purpose and of ministry in his seasons, in his timings, in the way that is perfect, that blesses, that you are well able to live through. He wants you so close. And whoever you are, he is able to make you new, to make you able, and then to cause you to rise up into whatever he has for you. Jesus didn't even use the detail of this call for some of the other disciples. So you don't have to think, well, I'm going to be called to exactly what Simon was or exactly what Andrew was. No, no. He has a perfect work for you, a life for you, a blessed purpose of intimately running with the strength and the speed and the pace of God, who is your creator, your savior, and the one who desires nothing more than to make a way for you in his purpose. That's our thoughts for tonight. God willing, you'll be able to join us tomorrow night. Obviously, if you're on catch up, you can just click the next video. I just hope it's a blessing. Tomorrow night, we'll be continuing on as we think about who Jesus is and what it is to follow after his example. God bless.